So we have a lot of brand new information to share in today's update, but to get right to it is that really the big idea is that right now inside of Congress, the biggest focus that they're really trying to get done right now is everything to do with the midterm elections. And again, this is the reason why this is really particularly important, not just because of stimulus, but basically for the sake of our country in general, is that because right now at this current time, as most of you guys know, the entire Congress, both the Senate, the House, and of course, inside of the president's office is completely ruled by Democrats. And the big idea is that it's going to be really particularly important, even though we know obviously right now it's very difficult. It's going to be relatively important for them to try to control as many seats as possible inside of Congress. The biggest reason, and this goes on why it's even more important than just about stimulus at this point, is that because if they really want to enact any kind of policy or law going forward, it doesn't even have to deal with just stimulus, although that is definitely true, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But the big idea is any kind of policy, law, anything in that world, whether this is about social, economic, financial, political, even things such as about climate change, environmental, any kind of document, law, or anything like that, it's going to be relatively important for them to try to control as much of Congress as possible. So what I really want to talk about in today's update is really going to be talking about what's going on inside of Congress right now. We have some new information about stimulus checks just in general. I do want to cover the child tax credit, and of course, to be inclusive as much as possible, I also want to maybe just end this by talking about the significance of what this means for every single other person. And of course, as always, there are going to be timestamps throughout the video, so you can feel free to jump around. However, I do recommend watching through every single minute, just because it really will give you the big picture of what's going on inside of our country at this current time. So of course, as always, we are going to get started, but real fast, as always, if you guys enjoy videos like this, to share support, remember to smash the like button, or you can watch to the end to decide, but it is greatly appreciated. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell for similar videos and also other finance topics. So we talk about topics that involve just improving our financial lives as much as possible. And of course, as always, feel free to comment any questions, maybe personal thoughts, or even if you want to just say a simple hello. It really is always great to see and hear from familiar and new faces as well. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So we're going to start by just talking about general stimulus checks, and the really big idea is you might have seen videos right now about the $3,200 stimulus check. All this really is that if you are by any chance someone that's waiting for your first 3 stimulus checks, and again, this doesn't apply to many people, but there are still some people that commented about how they still never received part of their first 3 stimulus checks. If by any chance, they did recently release a new deadline that they're hoping to try to not just send out, but to be able to physically claim that stimulus check. You're going to have to try to file a rebate program by the deadline of November 15th of 2022. So if by any chance this applies to you, we still have about 2 weeks from the release of this video, which is the really great news. And again, you might have seen other videos about this, so I think it's really important to clarify that this is talking about past stimulus checks, because there is still a lot of confusion about this. The $3,200 is really because the first stimulus check was $1,200, the second was $600, and the third one was $1,400. So $1,200 plus $600 plus $1,400 is $3,200. So that's really where you get that dollar amount. Now, to talk a little bit now about the child tax credit, is that the really good news is that there were some articles that recently just came out, and also there were certain times when Congress actually did officially come out to speak a little bit on it, that the good news is that there is still a lot of optimism of trying to bring back the $300 monthly child tax credit program that we all really loved very much for families. Now, if this doesn't necessarily apply to you, we will get to in a little bit about what this means for every single other person. So even if you don't have a family, we're going to try to be as inclusive as we can. But the big idea really is that the plans in order to do the child tax credit, the great news is that they are still very much on the table. In fact, a follow-up to this is that the new information is that they're really hoping to even revise it even further. Whether this is good or not really just depends on you or your specific situation that you're currently in. The big idea is that the foresight right now is that they're going to try to bring back the child tax credit, but, and the keyword is but, they're probably going to also add a lot of caveats to it. So all this really means is that they want to approve a child tax credit program, but they also want to implement a lot of other rules that are really important as well. The good news is that it means that the probability of having it approved starts to increase. The not so good news is that there might be some people that do not necessarily qualify for it. So what is an example of this, maybe just to give a specific example, is that in order to try to bring back the child tax credit, they're contemplating right now about trying to implement some law related to a work requirement. In other words, that in order to try to get this child tax credit, you have to have worked for a certain amount of hours slash made a certain amount of money during this particular year in order to get on it. How much money? How much time? They're still kind of deciding on specific numbers, but I believe right now on the table, they're thinking about $10,000. They're thinking about trying to set a rule where in order to get onto this, you have to have been someone that has actually made at least $10,000 during the year. So this is good and not so good news. The good news is that it means that it's much more likely to approve because, again, a lot of times when it comes to objectively speaking, a lot of the Republicans' policies, and they are going to very likely need some Republican support to get this through, is that they really want to encourage people to work so it doesn't seem like they're giving out free money. Again, I'm just speaking objectively to what the way they view things right now in this situation. But obviously, the not so good news is that it means that if you are really going through a lot of difficulties right now, and I say this particularly because a lot of the people that probably need child tax credit also happens to be people that might be unemployed or not making a lot of money in particular. So what this really means is that if you don't hit that particular threshold, you might not actually be able to physically qualify for the child tax credit. So again, whether this is good or not so good news just kind of depends on your specific financial situation right now. But of course, feel free to leave a comment about what you think, whether you support or don't support, or just your particular opinions about this rule, because it is very controversial, and it is also very interesting to see what everyone thinks about this current rule, policy, and situation. Now, what is also really, really nice is that there are definitely also a lot of Republicans that do support a child tax credit as well. An example of this is Mitt Romney. He actually wrote up his own personal proposal about what he wants in a child tax credit. I think that the big idea right now is that what they're really trying to focus on is creating some kind of compromise so to be able to physically get it through. So what is this compromise? Is that a lot of the people on the Republican Party right now, or a lot of the politicians there, they really want to start to implement a lot of tax breaks that they want to go through. So one of the goals is that by the very, very end of this year, as a lot of new policies pop up related to tax breaks, so corporate tax breaks, tax cuts, trying to reduce the taxes in those areas, what they might potentially do is to try to combine those plans with the plans of the child tax credit to kind of merge them together into one proposal, so that maybe trying to be able to make both sides as happy as they possibly can. In other words, to try to make some kind of exchange. The Republicans will be able to get their tax cut, tax break, corporate, all those tax programs that they really want. And at the same time, a lot of the Democrats will be able to have their social programs like child tax credit. Again, I think it's important to notice also another huge quick insert is that they are not going to be planning to print any more money. Right now at this time, there is a massive inflation crisis that's going on. So they're not trying to print any more money. But what they are potentially going to do is to try to look into redirecting money, because there are still a lot of funds that they very much can work with and money still left over from the first 3 stimulus packages. And I think that's one of the ultimate goals that they're really trying to shoot and go for at this particular time. Now, what exactly does this mean for everybody else that's watching this video, including myself, because I admittedly am someone that does not have kids, even though I know a lot of people that I grew up with that are just starting to pop out kids and all that, is really about the fact that while it is true that the child tax credit right now is looking very optimistic, which is the good news according to many resources, however, there is still a lot of uncertainty. One thing though is that relatively also somewhat of bright positive news is that there are also a lot of other kinds of stimulus programs for single individuals like me and many people probably watching this that might still potentially come. Obviously, we've talked about some of them already, such as about Social Security. There was a $1,050 stimulus check that was just recently approved that is going out to about a couple million people in our country. I already made a video that talks about it. I'll put it at the very end screen and it'll be on the bottom. The name of that video is literally going to be $10,050 stimulus. No, not 10,000. I wish it was 10. There was actually physically a grant program back then that many people got $10,000 from. But of course, that's something of the past. But it was something that really did end up happening. If you've been here for a while, you probably remember that. Consider subscribing if you're brand new here. But there is actually currently a $1,050 fourth stimulus check that was actually just approved going out to several million people right now. Because we already talked about that, we won't talk as much about that in today's video. So definitely check that out at the end screen. It'll be on the bottom. It talks about the qualifications, what it's about, how to physically get on it, and then just all of the details that's important to know. So definitely check out that video. But beyond that program, is that it is looking possible right now that there might be other programs, and we're already starting to see a lot of other programs pop up, whether it's on very focused, very state level, or very, very category level. So in other words, just people in particular demographics that might be able to potentially get onto this program. But of course, all of this stuff, what other programs they come out in the future, we just really have to hopefully see in one of the future episodes of The Kevin Show. So with that being said, that's pretty much what I really wanted to cover in today's update. So if you guys made it to the end, huge thanks. Maybe leave a comment, really anything down below. Remember to smash the like button, consider subscribing, hitting the bell if you guys enjoy videos like this. And of course, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well. Hopefully everyone had a great, happy Halloween if you're watching this around release date. And hope to see you guys next time. Thank you guys so much again.